What is up, people? So today we are talking about the 5 things that I learned from transcribing the VFJams live project from 2018. So if you don't know me, my name is Tim Buell. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a full-time drummer. I do studio work, I do touring, and a lot of what I do is online education and transcribing, which transcribing, if you don't know, is the act of hearing a drummer play something and then notating that and creating sheet music out of it. So that's a little bit about me. And if you don't know what the VFJams Live project was, it is an awesome series that Vic Firth did on YouTube where they got a ton of world-class drummers and a world-class band. They got them all in the same room and they did live recordings of some awesome arrangements. After all of it was recorded, Vic Firth sent me a lot of the videos and I transcribed them. I listened to what the drummer played and then I wrote out the sheet music of exactly what they played, all the notes, all the stickings, all of that. So before I get into the 5 things that I learned from transcribing these extraordinary drummers, I want to talk about 2 questions that I got a ton from all of you. So one, the notation software that I use, the stuff that I put the sheet music into and then, print it out so that Vic Firth could put it in the videos and that we can make sheet music out of it. That notation software is called Finale, and I use Finale version 25. Finale is a great notation software. It is kind of pricey, but if the transcribing is something you're going to do a lot, Finale is definitely worth checking out. I love it, and it's kind of the industry standard. And the other question I got a lot was, how on earth did you transcribe these things? And one, I've taken a lot of time. I went to college for music and studied drums there, and then beyond that, I am a full-time professional musician. So I've transcribed and charted a lot of stuff in my life. I've done it a lot. I'm not smarter than anyone or better than anyone at transcribing. I've just maybe possibly done it more than a lot of people. That's the first reason I was able to transcribe this stuff. But the second reason is I use an incredible piece of software called Transcribe, transcribe with an exclamation point. And Transcribe is a fantastic piece of software that you can put a MP3 or a video into it, and it can instantly slow that video down without warping the pitch, also slow down the video so that it makes transcribing, stuff like this a lot easier. So Transcribe is a fantastic piece of software that makes transcribing a lot easier. You can also loop sections and all of that stuff. So Transcribe is definitely worth looking into because a piece of software that can instantly slow stuff down without changing the pitch and looping sections that you're trying to listen to, looping measures that you're transcribing, all of that makes transcribing way easier. So, worth looking into. With that out of the way, let's get into the 5 things that I learned from transcribing these extraordinary drummers from the VFJams Live 2018 recording session. The first thing I learned is that transcriptions are limited. Written notation has its limitations with what the page can capture. And a good example is the Mike Mitchell performance. Mike played so much awesome stuff with so much feel and vibe and all of that stuff, and that really can't be fully captured on the written page. Transcriptions are limited with how we can notate swing and how we can notate vibe and feel. There are rhythms that are played straight, and then there are rhythms that are played swung. And sometimes what someone plays is right in between those areas, right in between straight and swung. It's not quite straight, it's not, gridded and metronomically perfect, but it's also not swung to the nth degree and really, based purely on triplets or whatever. It's somewhere in between. And I think that it's important when you're transcribing, whether you just are starting or like me, you've done it a ton, to realize that with transcribing, you're only trying to get as close as you can to represent what happened in real life on the page. But it has its limitations, so get as close as you can, but always remember to go back to the recording. When you're learning something, when you're trying to perform a solo that is written out and transcribed, always visit the original performance, whether that's an MP3 or an album you love, or these videos for VFJams, always go back to the recording, because the only way to get all of the context we need is by visiting the original recording played by that drummer with their feel and their vibe and their style. The second thing I learned from transcribing the VFJams live performances is that a lot of drummers, and this is not, you can't say this for every drummer, but a lot of drummers, they aren't a master of every rudiment and every fill and every linear thing and all of that stuff. They're a master of a few different concepts that they make sound like endless vocabulary. So instead of learning, every kind of sticking combination and whatever at a shallow level, a lot of these players have taken one or two concepts and learned how to do them and perfect them and play them in almost an endless amount of variations, starting in different spots, playing them in different subdivisions, all to give the impression that it's an endless amount of vocabulary, when really it's just a few things that they've learned how to use in any way, shape, or form. The third thing I learned from the VFJams live transcription project is pacing is everything. The best example I can give for this is Benny Greb's solo on the tune that he played. In a solo, a lot of us, when we go to solo, we have our 16 bars or whatever, and we just play as many notes as we can. And that's not always the most musical thing. But if you look at Benny Greb's solo that he did on his tune Grapefruit, the solo literally starts with like quarter notes, and then it builds into some eighth note stuff, and then it builds into some 16th and some triplet stuff, and then toward the end it gets all the way to like 16th note triplets and 32nd notes. And then it kind of comes back down and tapers off, and then he's back to playing, the 16th based groove stuff that he was playing the rest of the tune. And I think it's a masterful way to pace a solo. He doesn't start out just 32nd notes straight away, because when you do that, you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to build to. You've already kind of said the most dramatic thing you can say. And Benny Greb does the exact opposite of that. He starts small and perfectly paces himself to build, keep adding complexity, keep adding speed until he builds to the climax of his solo. And then it's back into the tune. It's fun to look at one measure or two measures and dissect fills they did, but I challenge you to look at each song as a whole and look at how the artist not only paced maybe their solo that they played, but paced the grooves they played and the complexity of stuff. I think it's just a really great way to kind of study the musical aspect of how these drummers are thinking about things, to see the way they pace themselves throughout the song. The fourth thing I learned from the VFJams live transcription project is no one's perfect. When you start diving into all of these drummers, some of these drummers you can see that they used one take for part of the song, and they used another take for another part of the song, and then they rush certain phrases and they drag on certain phrases, and certain 16th note triplet things are a little not metrically perfect because they're rushing to get to the downbeat or whatever. And no matter who you're talking about, no matter how long they've played drums or music, they don't play it perfectly every single time. Obviously, the goal is to try and play things as best you can and as perfectly as you can every time you go to record or play a show or whatever, but you just can't do that. Even in basketball, the best three-point shooters in basketball still miss shots. I think it's easy to be self-critical and look at drummers that you admire and think, wow, they play it perfectly every time, and they don't. So it's kind of encouraging to know that, you're not perfect and neither are your heroes. But the other thing that's encouraging about that is we're not supposed to be perfect. And it would be boring if we were. That's what computers are for, but the human element of the fact that maybe someone's 32nd notes drag, or maybe their, triplet thing they played here rushed, That's part of the beauty of human beings playing music. And I think if you remove that, you just are left with a robot. And it kind of goes back to point number one. Transcriptions are limited with what they can capture. There's only so much detail I can put in a transcription. You have to listen to the recording to know that, every time they played this certain kick drum phrase, it wasn't quite exactly on the E. It was a little bit swung. It wasn't exactly gridded on the E of beat 3. It was a little bit behind the E, but it wasn't quite on the and. There's all these kind of subtle things that human beings do because they aren't perfect, and that's kind of what makes music the most enjoyable, I think. And the fifth thing I learned from the VFJams live transcription project is just that, on the same note of point number 4, if people aren't perfect, we're all always learning. Whether that means playing-wise, we're all learning new stuff, we're learning how to lock in with a metronome better, or transcription-wise. I used to be terrible at transcribing. It would take me seriously 4 hours to transcribe one little bar of music that wasn't even that hard. Because, I don't think anyone's born just being able to transcribe, Mark Guiliana or Benny Greb or Mike Mitchell. But because I've transcribed a lot, I've gotten a lot better, and I've gotten a lot quicker, and I've gotten a lot more accurate. But that being said, the Mike Mitchell transcription, that whole solo in the middle is very interpretive, very hard to notate, not just because he's playing a lot of fast subdivisions, but because it's not perfectly gridded. There's a ton of human element to what he's playing. And it was kind of the first time in a while I've been stumped. And it just kind of reminded me, we're all always learning. We never have it all figured out. And that's a good thing. We're all on a spectrum somewhere of being a total beginner at drums and being, the best drummer on planet Earth, or being we've never transcribed anything ever, and we do transcription for a living and we make money at it. We're all somewhere on the spectrum of this stuff. And I think with practice, with repetition, with getting challenged by something you've never faced before and then overcoming it and trying your best, that's how we get better. That's how we improve. And that's never something that stops. That's just kind of the nature of things. We're all getting better. And, some of us look at their performances and think, oh my gosh, that's the greatest performance ever, because some of them are just totally amazing. But they would look at those same performances and say, I see where I can get better. I see where I can improve. And I'm sure in 4 years, when I look back at these transcriptions, hopefully I'm not like, oh, these were just wrong, because I don't think they are. But it is possible that in 4 years, I'll look back and say, oh, on this transcription, I interpreted it this way. I might have interpreted it, now that I've encountered more stuff like that, I probably would have maybe written it out like this, or I don't know. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that we can always look back and say, oh man, this could have been better. And we always have the ability to look into the future and say, we're not done. We never arrive anywhere. We're always just trying to, focus on getting better and improving. So there you have it. Those are the 5 things that I learned from being the, insane lunatic that decided to transcribe these performances from the VFJams live event that they did last year at 2018 NAMM. All of the transcriptions from this project and the play-along tracks, the drumless play-along tracks of all these songs are available on Vic Firth's website. That link is in the description. Please go there, download this sheet music, learn these fills, learn these grooves, and play along to the play-along tracks that they've made. It is such a cool, free resource that we all can take advantage of. And I also have a free course on how you can learn to transcribe drums yourself, how you can learn to chart songs out and learn songs quicker. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can go to the description below, or you can just visit the link timbuellmusic.com/how-to-transcribe, and that is there for you. It's free. It's a 4-part mini course on how to transcribe and chart drums. And it'll be a good look behind the scenes of exactly what I did, what programs I used in my process on how I transcribe these Vic Firth Jams transcriptions. That series was awesome last year. I'm sure it's going to be just as awesome this year, so make sure you're subscribed so that you can see all that content when it comes out. And thank you so much for watching this video, and yeah, I'll see you around.